And if you tie up the programs that we have for the current needs of the organization, that is where that L&D will have an impact. And I think going through this path of business partnership with our leaders in the organization creates both a paradigm shift and a breakthrough that we have. Breakthrough in a sense that the operations will see HR as a partner for reaching their performance objectives, and paradigm because our leaders will take into heart that they have a role to play in the development of our people. And in so far, in my previous company, the 11 years company that I have worked with, I can see that we are getting that kind of impact that we are looking at. In the new company that I'm working with, this is also a path that I think our leaders loves to go and has been doing now. So I think it would not be difficult to go through that. Maybe the programs might change, but the mindset behind it would be the same.
Welcome and good day. Today we have a special treat. It's season 13 of Leader's Edge, episode 8. For today's topic, two words that we're familiar with were brought together and have created a different dynamic. We're talking about breakthrough and paradigm. Our expert for today about the breakthrough paradigm is Mark Elardo. Mark, as you can see, is a lot younger than me, but that doesn't mean much. He still carries a lot of experience. And just like me, he started finishing school in a subject matter that has nothing to do with training or facilitating. He actually finished chemistry. He stayed there for 4 years and then shifted to training in human resources, where he has been ever since. So maybe that's where we can start, Mark. Can you tell me a little more about your experience in HR and learning and development training?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon. Paul, thank you very much for this privilege to be part of this team guest that has been invited in the Leader's Edge. And yes, the story of my life has been an interesting one. I did not start as an HR practitioner. As you said, I was a chemist by profession. But there was a time when my boss asked me if I can handle both the HR role and the laboratory role. So I was the chemist at the time, extended role to be HR. I said yes. You have no choice after all when the company asks you to do something. And from there, I learned that I love to talk to people. And it is where my paradigm started to shift. I remember that there was another company. They were looking for a practitioner that has the technical background for you to understand operations, but at the same time, have the knowledge of HR, so that the moment that we design programs and develop programs for them, it will be coming from a heart of an HR, but the mind of the operations. And that's why I was hired in that company. And that is where my learning and development role started. And that's where the journey started. I was a supervisor. It was a Japanese company. After 3 years, I transferred into an American company, and I was the training supervisor there. Eventually, I became the country manager for learning and development, and was promoted through the years and became the manager for Asia Learning and Development. It was very challenging for me, not only in terms of language, but the culture of the audience that you have. And for 11 years, I stayed in that company. And then eventually, some decisions need to be made. And I made a decision to transfer here in BGC to be a senior manager for HR and learning and development. So all my life, majority of it has been into HR, and only 4 or 5 years has been spent based on my technical expertise.
Oh, okay, thank you. That's fascinating. I have a very similar background. I graduated from hotel and restaurant administration.
Mm.
Okay.
And what are we doing here?
Involved in operations, training, and all of that. It's a very similar. But let's go back to your topic today, which is breakthrough paradigm. Now, these two words, I'm sure we've all encountered somewhere. You could have breakthrough or paradigm, but personally, this is the first time I'm seeing them together. So let's start there and tell us a little more. Maybe you might want to define what it is, what makes it different from each word individually. Or what do you, how do you suggest we go through this breakthrough paradigm?
Yeah, I put these two words together because I think this is the journey of my life, Paul. When I joined Toastmasters International before, I was a speech contestant, and they asked me to create a speech. And in that speech, they asked me to introduce myself and my icebreaker. And I wonder, do we need volumes of pages to tell our story or whatever it may be? And to my surprise, I would summarize my entire life with only two capital letters, P and K. And it stands for pastor's kid. So I am a son of a pastor. I have been, I love to support my father in preaching in various evangelical churches. And through my life, from my college days until where I am now, I think two things happened to me. One, to change my mindset. And that's where paradigm is coming in. And the breakthroughs, because there are things in life that I have observed. Some of them I didn't even imagine that would happen to me. I remember when I was in college, or as I was about to graduate in high school, my mom asked me, "What course do you want to take?" And so I told my mother, "Mom, can I be an accountant?" And my mother said, "Sorry, son, I think there's no more banks around." And so I told her, "Can I be a genetic engineer instead?" And my mother said, "Sorry, I think all the lands have been surveyed now." So I said, "Can I be a civil engineer?" And said, "All the buildings are up and running now." And I said, "What do you want me to be? Do you want me to be an electrical engineer?" And they said, "You might be electrocuted." And there I learned that the reason behind that is that they don't want me to get a course that will take 5 years to finish because they cannot afford for me to go to college for 5 years. And so I was left with only three options. I don't like to study, so I only need to find courses that needs analysis. And at that time, we have three options to go. And one was BS Geology. The second one is BS Mathematics, and the third one is BS Chemistry. So I took up chemistry. And from there, I was very happy. I thought that this will be the journey of my life. After all, I have spent all my 4 years with all of those numerous terminologies and all of those formula that I need to memorize. And I was so proud by then, Paul. Can you imagine that during my first year in college, there were around 40 plus of us who took the board exam. I mean, 40 plus who enrolled in the BS chemistry subject, and there were only four who graduated, and I was part of the four. I was so proud of that. And then came the board exam. And when we saw the result, during that time, it was all in newspaper. You cannot see it online.
Yeah.
So I saw on the billboard or on the board of the school, 3 out of 4 from the school passed the board exam. And so I said, "Who is the out of?" So I went and find a newspaper, and from there I look at my name. And lo and behold, my name was not there. Out of desperation, I tried to look at the top 10. Still, my name was not there. And so I said to myself, "Oh, I am the out of." And every time I look at 3 out of 4, it always leaves me with a question in my mind: what will happen to me in a world where papers are needed? And I have to strive to find my work. I started as a sampler to get some copra or a coconut
Yes.
to sample it and check the oil
Content.
content of that. And then my boss from there, she found that I can be used also to be an analyst. And so from a sampler, I became an analyst sampler. I was okay because I did not pass the board exam but by then. But then later on, I became a raw material supervisor and eventually given that position. And when I became supervisor at the time, there's no need for you to be a chemist board passer to sign or something because the role is now into leadership. And I said to myself, I did not prepare for this. I used to study for all about formula, and when we do analysis, we have to analyze, for example, vitamin A. It is a whole day analysis that you do, and you just only talk to all the molecules and atoms that you can see around you. Not people. We are not. I am not trained personally, although I have been in church. I have not been trained personally. But the moment that I said a while ago, in my second company, where the boss asked me to handle HR, this is where my paradigm started to begin. This is where it begins to shift. That we might be trained to do for something, but if we maximize the potentials that we have, it might lead us into territories that are not even unknown to us. And when I recall the journey of my life, I would say this is a breakthrough. Who would have thought that a person who memorized that pressure times volume is equal to the number of moles times a constant R times T will now be talking about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the 7 habits of highly effective people. So when I combine all this together, I felt that my life went into a paradigm shift, and from there, the breakthrough.
That's an excellent example that you're sharing. I like the fact that you're also tying it mainly to your private life. I still remember when the pandemic struck. Okay, at the very beginning, all of these people were saying you have to find your why and things like that. And I was thinking, I don't think you'll find your why. I think your why will find you.
Correct.
I was not saying you're gonna have like, oh look, somebody's offering me an HR position. I don't know if I can do it, but then you find out you can. There's something striking that you said about the beginning about having the heart and the mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember what it was, but when you look at organizations today, and this is where maybe your chemistry background helps. Okay, there's a very famous leadership quote. It says, "Be hard on the process, but kind to the people."
Correct. I do agree with that.
Okay. In fact, when I happened to stumbled on it, it's actually quite old. It's older than let's put it this way. The first recorded one that I ever saw was in World War II. General Patton, of all people. Okay. Is something he believed in, and until now it is still in the handbook of the Marine training course. Okay, he said the process is the process. Remember the people behind it. And that said, how can you talk about your paradigm, the shift that you had, and how you applied it to the work situations that you have? Maybe you can share some examples.
I do, and I think this is something that I love about the work of L&D, right? Because in learning and development, we try to develop people, but not just develop them, but we have to understand the mind of the operations as well. We have to understand that there is an efficiency that they have to carry on. There is quality that we have to look into, processes that needs to be followed. Machines cannot stop, right?
Right.
It continues on going. The demand keeps on going, but we have to make sure that as the organization grows, we help people grow with them. Because I always believe that the organization in itself does not create its own culture. It is the people that is within that organization creates that culture. And so what we are doing now in L&D, which I think is very important, is sometimes as HR, this has been my experience. There are a lot of programs and practices or policies that we have in mind. We want to implement it. Work from home, for example, is something that is good. Learning management system, where you allow people to just read or go through a certain system where they can learn without the need of a live facilitator, can work. But it does not work all the time, right? You have to take into consideration the culture that you have, the resources that the organization have. And when you put all of this together, you'll find out that what allows us to bring out the best in the organization is that we make sure that our processes and our policies are the right path to take, but we have to carry our people together with them. So, therefore, change management, for example, when we applied it in the organization, is not only on the processes that you will change, it's not only on policies that you will change, it is not only when there are organizational changes that will come along, but how do we prepare people to understand the differences in people's behavior, the differences in people's personality, and how we handle ourselves. As if I can remember, the seven habits of highly effective people has always been divided into how we change people from being dependent to independent until eventually interdependence. And sometimes it amazes me and it surprises me that even the basics of attitude and values enhancement needs to be given and be reminded to our people, and at the same time to remind our leaders that we are not handling machines but we are handling people.
Can you expound? Can you just, if you can, share an actual example of how you applied that to either your current work, past work, any situation you had, if you can share?
Yeah, I remember, for example, we have a certain, let me divide it into two parts. Number one, let me divide it into how learning and development transition in a way that it supports operations. Uh, we, in the past, we used to facilitate trainings for 8 to 16 hours, 2 days of training. And then we think that operations will not be able to give certain time for that. And so we are able to innovate ourselves and are able to give around 2 or 3 hour training module, divided it into 3 or 4 sessions in a matter of 1 month time. In this way, we get the support of our operations as we go along the way. And this is where I think understanding the mind of the operations can be applied in the mindset of HR implementing training courses. But the second aspect is how would we incorporate this culture into the organization? I remember in my past company, we have the target is always to increase the operating income. And as it goes and moves along, we have to push people to be as efficient as they can be. And we don't even give time for their development. But we have implemented in the organization two things. Number one, there is a target of the number of hours that an employee needs to take for development. And then the second one, for our leaders, instead of their performance indicators or their scorecards, very specific to operations, we mandate and we work it out with them that people development should be included in their scorecard. And they will be evaluated not only on their efficiency, on quality and sales, but they are also being monitored by the readiness of their successor, by the engagement score of that organization, the number of development programs that they give to their high potentials. And by putting emphasis that we are monitoring this, it allowed the mindset of our operations leaders to think not only operational wise, but workforce management as well.
Excellent, excellent answer. And there are a lot of questions about learning and development. And one of the challenges, I think, I don't know if we're facing it now or faced it before, but I'm pretty sure it's now because my latest experience with learning and development was, as you pointed out, sometimes if I'm a manager on my scorecard, it will say, okay, let's say you're the high potential, okay, and you say, how many courses has Mark taken or completed? And the LMS can easily show that. The challenge here is sometimes the number of courses you take has nothing to do with the impact.
Correct.
Okay, so for example,
It reminds me.
okay,
I learned one company. it just reminds me, sorry to cut you off,
Right.
but it reminds me that one company gave a topic on something about flowers, and they said,
Okay.
what's the purpose of this training to the operations that we have? So I do agree on that.
I'll give you an example. Let's say you and I are high positions, and our boss is giving us, 5 courses each to take. Let's say one of the courses is coaching. Okay. Let's say I only finished 2, you finish all 5, for example. But in my case, because I took to heart the coaching exercise, I actually showed a monetary gain with my team because I just coached them better. But yet I only took 2 courses. Okay.
Correct.
So when you look at the measurement, I said, okay, yes, Mark took 5 courses, but Paul took 2. But yet Paul can show that he saved $25,000 over the year. What happens in that case? I mean, because one of the challenges L&D has is proving their existence.
Correct.
We can have so much money from the boss that it is okay. Have you made any switches there? Can you maybe relate some stories or experiences you have with this?
Yeah, and I think this is also a breakthrough that we went in through into the organization. I do agree with you. Sometimes when we evaluate trainings, it goes to the Kirkpatricks, or
Yes.
sometimes it goes to Patrick Lencioni, or if I remember correctly, the 4 levels, right? I forget who's the author of that, but we evaluate it that way. But one thing that we did for the organization is that we need to make sure that our L&D programs give an impact to the ROI of the company. And in order for us to do that, we are not monitoring only the number of trainings or the number of hours that our employees have joined, but we created a what we call a leadership development action plan, where it is really designed for you to do, and it follows a 70-20-10 principle, where 10% is on the training, 20% is on the coaching and mentoring, but 70% is on the actual application. So at the start of each of the development of our high potentials, we are not identifying the key trainings that they would join, but instead we are measuring a certain type of skills that they have to improve. For example, if your department has a very high turnover rate, you will be given a task as a leader to reduce turnover by for reasons that people are not having development programs in the organization. So in that way, we are not monitoring the trainings, but we are reducing the attrition, because people's reason of living, that there's no growth in the organization, is now being addressed. And if you tie up the programs that we have for the current needs of the organization, that is where that L&D will have an impact. And I think going through this path of business partnership with our leaders in the organization creates both a paradigm shift and a breakthrough that we have. Breakthrough in a sense that the operations will see HR as a partner for reaching their performance objectives, and paradigm because our leaders will take into heart that they have a role to play in the development of our people. And in so far, in my previous company, the 11 years company that I have worked with, I can see that we are getting that kind of impact that we are looking at. In the new company that I'm working with, this is also a path that I think our leaders loves to go and has been doing now. So I think it would not be difficult to go through that. Maybe the programs might change, but the mindset behind it would be the same.
It's interesting how you said HR is now a partner to help you reach your performance. I'm sure you've had experience, and I've definitely had experience that HR was a partner in punishing you for not reaching your performance. Okay. In
Correct.
fact, in fact, in fact, even the even processes I've seen used as punishment tools. And I said, "Oh my goodness, what's happening here?" Okay. But you do make valid some very excellent points, very good points. Another question I like to ask is when it comes to attitude, because my experience, believe it or not, is telling me that yes, attitude and skill set is important. I can't deny that. But at the end of the day, oftentimes it's the repeated action that generates the attitude,
Correct.
that generates the mindset. Okay. There's a very famous quote from Sir Francis Bacon. He goes, "When you start with doubt, you end with certainty. When you start with certainty, you end with doubt." And I thought about it. That sounds familiar. Okay. And I noticed that because a lot of the trainings, at least some of the ones that I used to run, we focused a lot on mindset. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But if I'm given only 2 hours to train somebody, I'd prefer to train him, on something he can repeat that will lead to the right direction. Just tell him to do that. Okay. And let's see what happens. With your experience, are you seeing something similar in your trainings or
I do agree, especially in the virtual platform. So in the virtual platform, you cannot it's very difficult to really talk about how people can change their mindset, right? Because sometimes they don't open their video. You are not sure if they are there. They join you in the first 15 minutes and they join you back in the last 15 minutes for attendance purposes. So you are not really sure if they are there. So what we are trying to do, and I think this is something new for me, this is also a new learning for me. I think the pandemic gives me a lot of breakthrough in terms of L&D. I'm not so used to do virtual facilitation. I am not even a fan of virtual facilitation for some quite some time, because I am a kind of facilitator who really wants to see the interaction between my audience. But I have to learn that this is where the world goes right through now. And so what we did is that we purposely design our virtual trainings to be a repeated reminder, maybe 2 to 3 points that they can bring home after the training. Maybe it's not a part where we challenge their paradigm, but it is more about when we do our business emails, what are the things that we have to take into consideration? If we will do performance appraisal, how can we open our conversation instead of giving statements but using coaching, for example, as a platform to ask for the grow model, as simple as that. But going into conflict resolution or understanding the different motivation for people, we really designed to put it either in a face-to-face training or a group discussion with our leaders. Maybe we go over lunch and learn to talk about things that we have to do. It might not be the formal one, but the informal ones. But things that really involves changing behavior, it needs really a lot of time. Coaching, for example, you can teach them the model of grow, but how to be a coach is something that you have to experience and go through over and over again before you can really tell yourself that you are a coach now. And so putting this into perspective, we are trying to balance giving knowledge versus teaching them hard skills in terms of the soft skills, or shall we say the leadership and behavior skills. So it's always a balance on how to do with it. The struggle is still there. I know that we were not able to resolve it in the best way we can, but giving them small things to do and small things to remember could be an output that we get from all of these small trainings that we give.
actually I just had a aha moment also when you said that when it comes to virtual learning, focus on a repeated task, if you want to say, a repeated behavior. Uh, you know, how would you say mindset is a good thing to talk about, but when it comes to virtual learning, the actual task or repeated behavior is what matters more. And I can definitely see that happening. Uh, even something as simple like motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, most people don't have to understand that motivation is a habit. It's not.
Correct.
It's not me listening to you. Hey, I'm motivated, and I'm out the door. I said, "Good luck." Motivation, like any other skill, as a habit, just has to be repeated. Okay, and even the learning and development, how do you say, sphere, there's a lot of change going on. And I'm pretty sure you know also that when it comes to virtual e-learning and all of that, it's a matter of just maybe getting the right mix to make it run right for your organization. It's not you just go all virtual or all e-learning or all face to face. I came from face to face, and I had to make the leap as well, going into virtual. The differences are huge, but it's something that for me is more than workable. We just have to figure out how to work through it. But when it comes to the paradigm shift, okay, we've seen a paradigm shift, especially in L&D. I'm sure there's been a paradigm shift in HR as well. Okay, operations, they have their own situation, but operations for me is still meet your production target or else. Okay. Okay. Uh, but when you combine all of these in general, what are some suggestions that you can maybe give leaders and organizations how to approach this whole paradigm shift? Because in my case, I believe it's not so much the shift that's the issue, it's the speed at which it has to happen or is
Correct.
happening. It's just happening too quickly. Okay, that we just sometimes we become a zombie. You know what I mean? So, walking around. Well, how can you help companies deal with that?
I think two points on that, Paul. First, on the driving change, right? Because we are working in an organization. An organization have their changes, and we have to support the changes of the organization, no matter what it is. Because organization in itself have their own set of culture. And so, with that, we train our managers not only on the skills of understanding the impact of every change to the people, their thoughts, their minds, their anxieties. Will I have work after this? Do I still know how to perform when we change the system, or when we change to a new to a new product? I remember someone who is in doubt if the computation of Excel is correct, and she wants to use her own calculator just to check if Excel is correct. So you cannot force all people to learn and go through all of the systems. So a lot of this goes through their mind. So we train our leaders that they have to understand the point of view of those people around them, and they have to understand that in the square wheels principle, those that are in front sees where we are going, but those at the back who have been pushing the cart and giving all the efforts, they might know that they are doing something, but if we will not allow them to see what's going on in front, they might not have the same heart and motivation from us. I remember I have a small milk tea shop in the province, and we have to tell our people that we have to reach this much of a break even cost every day, because if not, we will be able to close the shop. And for them, they just think that because we are getting this much, that the milk tea shop is earning, but eventually we are losing. So that's the part where we have to understand both. But the second one is we have to make sure that they will drive change as fast as it can be. The organization cannot wait for long for people to adjust. So we have to give them the mindset of growth mindset, that change is necessary and important to the organization as well. But in my experience with L&D, I have been into different kinds of organization. One has been led by Filipinos, the other by Germans, the other by Japanese, the others Chinese, the others American. One thing I learned, and I think this is something that just dawned on me, that as L&D, we have also to balance if the tools that we are giving our people and the mindset that we want to create, is this a more generic mindset, or is this helping them to be more aligned to the core behaviors and culture of the organization? Because we have to always remind our people that yes, we want to push you, but at the same time we have to respect the culture that we build in our organization. After all, our role is to make sure that our people will be ready for the future in alignment to the culture of the organization. And therefore, we have to choose wisely on how to bring our message, taking into consideration that there are two aspects that we have to look into every time we develop programs or development for our people, especially in terms of mindset, because we might bring them into a mindset that is not aligned to where the path of the organization will be going through. So I think once you can align both of this, we are in the right path in developing our people.
Excellent points. How you have to work with the mindset of the leadership. And one thing that you point out is that they're in alignment with the culture and you can also say values of the organization. Okay. How about you have talents in your team? Okay. And aside from training, what are other ways you can encourage these kind of people who you can see potential in them? What are other ways you can help them grow other than training?
Yeah, so we have developed certain program where we allow our high potentials. We ask the leaders for our high potentials, what are the strengths that they have, and how will they be able to share their strengths to others. For example, if I am very good in AutoCAD or whatever system it might be, I can ask you to create a way where you will develop others to follow your footsteps. We work with our technical experts not only in terms of training but for them to be able to mentor others as well. So we train them how to be coaches and we train them to be mentors. The other one is that we allow exposure. We, for example, in the company that we have right now, we are into agriculture and there are different fields of agriculture. Some understand what is it that they are doing, but they don't see the overall picture of what we are doing in our business. And by allowing them to be immersed, we even ask for some of the leaders that if hiring is not needed but maybe a support from someone who is interested to learn from there and they can be with you, they can do that. So they can go through that level of experience. In this way they will learn it the by experience, not by theories. And in my previous organization, I remember we have this training for our high potential leaders. We call it the managers for a week.
Mm.
Managers for a week. So we let them sit down in the seat, the manager's office for 1 week, and we allow them to make hard decisions. Although the final decision still goes to the manager, but for example, there will be budget that needs to be approved or new programs that needs to be implemented. They will carry their own mind and they would say, on my side, I will approve this or let's do this. In that way, we allow them to be managers, although accountability still goes to that. And I remember in one of our plant in India, the moment that we give them the role to be a manager for a week, the parking slot in the condominium where the office is also given to these people so that they can park their car there, really feel it, get out from this. Because I think the best way to develop people is really through experience. We have to bring them into the mindset for a certain journey that they have not reached yet. And by putting them there and guiding them is something that is very useful to organizations.
Actually, I'm very fortunate in that sense because in my experience, I've been a CEO and I've started in the ranks. I've been through all the levels. So when I train people, I know the pressures the manager goes through. I know the pressure the first time leader has to go through. And I even raised the family, put that all together. So I said, okay, I kind of get it where you are. But one thing that I always emphasize in my trainings, especially when I'm working with the either new supervisors or team leaders, the pseudo supervisors, if you want to say, and even the frontliners, is I encourage them to be good followers. Now, when I'm saying good followers, I'm not saying you just follow everything they say, but be prepared to tell the boss he's wrong. Prepared to just tell him, okay, and I even give them nice words to say. Now, You've spoken a lot about what you're doing for the leaders. How about for the people who follow them? What are you doing for them?
So for our followers, we have to take into consideration. We have a lot of uh, programs that we give to our people. We even give engagement surveys to our people down below. We have to understand where they are coming from. We ask them simple questions like, "Am I proud to work in this company? Do my supervisors and I have good working relationship?" Because getting this data and making analytics out of it allows us to put where our focus would be. Would it be more into relationship building? Will it be more into skills building? That we give through the training needs analysis and the standard programs that we offer for our people. But what we are really trying to do for our people is, number one, they should, I think one of the push that we are giving to our people now is stretch goal. They need to understand why the leaders will stretch them beyond the so-called job description that they have. They always say this is no longer my work, but we have to give them the right mindset behind it, that you have been given an additional task because the leaders believe that you can do so. And sometimes, to my surprise, people just need to be reminded that you are not being singled out in all of this. You should take it something positively that your boss is doing this to you. So that's one thing that we do about their goals. We are also training our people for owning their career development. And in that way, we ask them and we help them develop these skills where they don't wait for leaders to develop them, but they find their way into leading. For example, if before they're only a support in one of the projects, but maybe they can raise their hand and they would say, "Can I be the project manager in the next time?" Now, it might be hard, it might be difficult because you need to be assertive in this way, and therefore we have to develop assertive communication so that people can express themselves as well. But what we are making sure is that we need to make sure that our people, those followers down below, are properly placed. We don't want that they are in the development stage or being developed because of some behaviors that you have to correct, skills and knowledge that they don't have yet. So we want to focus it so that the moment that they can deliver what is asked of them, we would be ready to bring them to the next level, and in that way allowing them to take ownership of how they develop as well.
Do you feel that when you do things like this, especially for the followers and for the leadership, that there is a pressure, maybe good or bad, that I have to grow in this company. I have to, advance to the next level. When some people, they don't want that. They're just happy, coming in, doing
i
work, and going home.
I do agree. I have even seen an experience that we tried to promote people to the next level, but based on the evaluation, we felt that maybe that role is not really for them, and they work best into this level. And I do agree with you, Paul. There are people who said, "I'm happy with where I am right now," and
Right.
so because we always want development as well. The organization have developed two parts of people's growth: the leadership path and the technical path. So as they grow and they become experts of what they do, we enhance their specialist level so that they can stay where they are if they don't want to go there. I remember that in one of the leadership review that we have, we only define high potentials as people who have the right skills but wants leadership for the next level. If they don't want to go to the next level, we don't call them anymore high potentials, but maybe good performers or high performers, but no longer potentials, because we cannot bring them and develop them to the next level. But I think as an organization, we have to accept that fact that not all wants to grow. And this is something that we have to remind our leaders as well. I have experienced this personally as well, Paul, where I have been developed to really manage into something that I know I can, but my heart is not there. My heart is always into being able to train people and partly organizational development as well. But I was put into a task where my role increased. It is more into business partnership, discussing with our key leaders in the organization of how we improve the culture and all. But on the facilitation side, it was lost from me. But this is where I find fulfillment every time that the stories of my life will give an impact to people. And in that way, I know my skills improve, but it was very stretched for me. And I want to do the things that I want. So we always remind the managers to ask their people as well if they are ready to go into the next level and they are ready to take the task and the path where we lead them to be. And I think having those kind of conversation with the one that is stretching people and those that's being stretched have to have those open conversations.
The importance for me is with those open conversations is sometimes you make the person feel guilty for not
Correct.
being wanted to be promoted. Okay. And so he also feels bad, why is he making me feel guilty if I don't want to be a manager? It was funny because my first interview here, uh, Dino asked me, I said, so what can advice can you give potential leaders? And I said, be careful what you ask for. Because ultimately, and I'm sure you know this, ultimate leadership for me is a decision. Okay, you can even be a CEO, but you haven't decided to be a leader yet. You're still a
Correct.
very good manager.
You don't know how to deal with people, but
Yeah, or you just look at the numbers kind of thing. But that's another story in itself. Let's see. You know, this has been a fascinating conversation. I actually had a lot of aha moments, if you want to say, new learnings. And one thing very, very important with new learnings is you write them down. Otherwise, you'll forget them. Okay, my aha moment here was when you talk about virtual training. Virtual training is really good at supporting repeated behaviors. Okay, in fact, even if you do the 1 hour, 2 hour courses, just to go back and say, hey, what happened? Okay, uh, it's far more effective that way. When it comes to attitude and mindset, those will always be there. My take is it's still a matter of being able to repeat the right behaviors that will reinforce the attitude. And sometimes it's also a cultural thing. It's the culture that encourages it. Sometimes it discourages it. Hopefully not. Okay. But this has been a fantastic topic. And can you tell us in the future, how can we reach you? Are there any events maybe that you want to promote?
I don't know. I'm doing full time job now, so I don't usually promote much of additional trainings outside of the organization. But on weekends and things like this, on holidays, I can do facilitation as well. I can talk and you can invite me. You can reach me through my Facebook account. It's Mark Elardo. Um, just that you can see me there. I think I'm wearing white right now in my profile
Okay.
picture. So you can just give me a message in there. I am always passionate to share whatever I have and whatever I can give to organizations, to individuals, even to churches if they want to. My passion is always to share the lifelong lessons that I have learned to help you grow, not only in terms of the learning and development, but in life as well. Because the breakthrough paradigm is a story of my life, how by a change of mindset, it changes my path from being a technical expert to learning and development. It might be two separate paths together, but the moment that you combine them together, you will be a very good asset to the organization that you will be working with.
Excellent. That's wonderful to hear. I cannot thank you enough. It was good to hear you speak about the challenges L&D is going through today, like all other aspects of organizations. But a lot of us in this group are in that sphere, if you want to say. Many of us are facilitators or HR folks. And the challenges you spoke of, I think, resonated with much of our audience today. And for our next schedule, and please, this is something you cannot miss. we will have Eric Manalo for episode 9, and he'll be talking about the power of success attitudes. One more time, remember, aha moments are only learned if you write them down. So I encourage all of you to write down in the chat some of the things that you remember the most, some of the new learnings that you had. In my case, it was virtual learning is an excellent venue or media for repeating behaviors. I One thing that really struck me with this conversation was how deliberate the efforts are of L&D to address the ever-changing situation around us, the ever-changing breakthrough paradigms. So please write down your thoughts in the chat. And if you liked what you saw today, please click on subscribe and like at the bottom. And as always, learning is a never ending journey with limitless vistas.